Happy Monday, my beautiful Mon family. I want you to stay with me because if you're always telling yourself, I'll be happy later, this episode might be a little bit uncomfortable. We somehow decided happiness is something we unlock after the grind or after the goal or after we finally become the future version of ourselves. But here's something that I really want you to keep in mind throughout this episode. Happiness isn't excitement. It's when your inner world stops fighting your outer reality. Meanwhile, life is happening. Love is showing up. Moments are passing.
This is MON, still showing up.
Hosted by Denise.
So let's start with this MON story and continue sharing your stories week after week. Someone said, so for me growing up, ahorita meant later, not now, just later. And I was in Mexico. Okay, fun for you that you're in Mexico. Wish I was in Mexico. Um, about to go to my room, and I asked this guy for some towels. He looked at me and goes, "Sí, ahorita." In my head, I'm like, cool, that means not right now. But actually, I needed the towels right now because I was about to go upstairs. I'm standing there waiting, and then the guy starts walking away. So I'm like, hey, I need the towels right now. And he's like, sí, sí, ahorita. So he keeps walking. I followed him into the closet because I asked for some towels and he wasn't giving me the service and he was being rude. And he turned around holding the towels, looking at me confused because ahorita to him meant right now, as in, I'm literally getting them this second. Meanwhile, I chased this man into a closet over a misunderstanding. I apologized immediately and laughed at myself. But anyways, you learned your lesson, and that man was probably traumatized. But yeah, hopefully you enjoyed Mexico. We're over here in the cold, but thank you for showing up. um, Now I have a mom story of my own. And it's not really a MON story. It was just this week has just been tiring, but consistently showing up, Mercedes showing up at the gym, her legs are tired. I showed up because I I went to the gym and I thought I carry my hydro jug everywhere. Obviously, it's usually here, right? But I went to the gym and I left it at the gym until I got home. When I go to reach for my bag, I'm like, oh my God, I left my hydro jug at the gym. But long story short, hey, we walked into the gym. The first thing my mom goes, Mira, your jug, your hydro jug. And she caught it and then they gave it to me immediately, but I was super happy. And that's how I showed up. I was upset about my jug, but I didn't let it get to me. And yeah, there's good people in this world. They probably saw it and just brought it up. Anyways, that's how I showed up this week. So continue sharing your mom stories. I feel like everybody's going through it. Either somebody's sick, somebody's overwhelmed, tired, but continue showing up. So we're going to start off with the story just to put things into perspective, and really get into the escargot of things. So there's a story about a woman who went to visit a teacher because she said she couldn't figure out how to be happy. She told him, my life isn't bad, but my mind never rests. I keep thinking about what's next, what should I be doing, who should I be becoming? And you know what the teacher did? The teacher didn't answer her. He poured her a cup of tea and he kept pouring. The tea filled the cup, then spills over the sides onto the table and then onto the floor. And then finally she said, stop, it's overflowing. And the teacher said, exactly. Your life isn't empty. Your cup is already full. But you can't feel happy because you won't stop pouring. You just need permission to stop pouring and pouring and pouring and really look at your life and be like, wow, it's not that bad. And, this has been sitting with me for a while because myself, I've, realized how often I've I realized how often I have postponed my own happiness. And I told myself that I feel better later, as I mentioned, after the goal, after the next level, or after life made more sense. And I'm sure you guys have noticed that too. And then I noticed something that really shifted my whole perspective in terms of happiness. And why does happiness look so different for everyone? And I know people from completely different backgrounds who all define their happiness completely different. I've seen people who have been raised in survival, right? People who grew up needing to be in alert, to be strong, to be prepared. They've learned early that nothing is promised. So rest felt unsafe, joy felt very irresponsible, and love felt something that you earned once life slowed down. So for them, their definition of happiness becomes a future reward, something they allow themselves after they feel fully, stable and secure. And then, there's people who were raised in love, and you might be, oh, these people are always happy. Well, they have the supportive family, the emotional safety, the encouragement, right? And sometimes even they struggle because love alone doesn't automatically teach self-worth or direction. They can also feel lost, unsure, or really disconnected with their purpose. And then you've also seen people who were raised with money, famous people. They have the resource, they have the access, they have the options, and still they have anxiety. They still have restlessness. They still feel empty inside because money can remove the stress, but it can't teach you how to be present. It can't teach you how to love yourself. And you might be saying, where's she going with this? And it's that no matter how you start, whether that's survival, love, or wealth, you will never feel fully happy or content if you don't know how to sit with yourself, if you don't know how to appreciate those small moments, and if you don't know how to be kind to your own mind, if you don't know how to be present in your own life as well. Over the holidays, you guys know I'm very nosy, okay? So I'm always analyzing people. So let's say I analyze person A and person B because I'm not going to mention their names, right? And I know that they're both, very genuinely happy. But if I'm being honest, I judged one of them at first because I'm like, that can't truly be your happiness. And as I'm listening to them having their conversation, person A is what most people would call a simple life. House paid off, jobs that cover the bills, family clothes, routine days, no debt screaming in the background. And they wake up, they do what they do, they eat dinner, watch shows, go to bed, have hobbies, they sleep peacefully. And then I caught myself thinking, don't you want more? But then I realized they don't feel like they're missing anything. They're not bored, they're content, and they're not settling, they're not stuck, they're full. And that's their happiness. And then there's person B, right? Person B has time. They have the flexibility, the freedom, the kind of schedule where people online say they're manifesting. But then when I really paid attention, I noticed the restlessness, the scrolling without intention, planning the next thing before they enjoy their current one, or feeling uncomfortable in an open space. And it felt like they were at an all inclusive resort. They had everything, but they were still checking their emails. Happiness has nothing to do with what your life looks like, and way more to do with whether your mind knows how to rest where you're at. And that's the theme, right, of happiness. And obviously, I have the book right here, The Art of Happiness. And in the book, this, idea landed a little bit deeper. The book talks about how when the mind is discontent, it will always do more. Not because it's needed, but because the mind hasn't learned how to be at peace. Um, and even psychology backs this up. Basic needs are met, more money, more freedom, more status doesn't significantly increase long-term happiness. What matters the most is your mental orientation, not the external upgrade, right? Which is why people say, I'm happy because my family's healthy, right? And this also explains why, different people from different environments can still feel empty. Now, I really want to pause here because I don't want this to be really misunderstood because a lot of you are probably thinking, um, she's just saying just to be happy and content, right? And that's not what I'm saying. I am not saying don't focus on your goals. I'm not saying stop chasing more because that's okay. I like chasing more. I'm not saying slow down your ambition, right? As I mentioned, I'm ambitious. I love growth. I love building. That's me. But what I'm saying is this: you don't have to be miserable in order to be motivated. Contentment does not mean that you're settling. And ambition does not mean dissatisfaction, right? You can literally be grateful and hungry. You can appreciate where you are and still be excited about where you are going. It's literally, contentment saying, I'm okay right here. And then your ambition saying after that, and I'm still moving forward. So you can be okay right here, and happy and still move forward. Those two can exist at the same time. And what drains people isn't the ambition, it's postponing happiness until some imaginary future version of yourself shows up. I'll relax when I get there. I'll enjoy life after the season. I'll be proud of myself once I finally dot 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 dot. No, that's not ambition. That's emotional debt to yourself. It's like living on credit with joy. I'm gonna call out the men right now because I've seen this pattern, especially over and over with men. You want to be the breadwinner, you want to make sure you're good for your woman, but men believe the only way to build something meaningful is to basically postpone what they want and everything out because they say, I can't afford these distractions. I'll make space for love later. I need to focus right now in my career. So they isolate and they call themselves, that it's discipline. But the truth that nobody really talks about is that isolation could look like you're basically focusing, but sometimes it's just fear dressed up as ambition. And not fear of failure, because fear of losing control, that's fear of being needed before they feel ready. So work becomes safer than people. And you're probably a man listening to this, right? You have goals for yourself. Or I think now in men's society, and we'll probably talk about it a little bit in monthly chaos, right? The expectations of adulthood and um, how we shouldn't be doing things if we're not at a given point. Like I've seen people say, "Oh, you can't why are you spending money on this if you're not secured here?" No. Live in the moment. You don't know when's your last time on earth. Our time is so precious. None of us are above God, and none of us are promised tomorrow. None of us know how many days later we actually have. And if today was your last day, would you feel like you lived or like you were always preparing to live? And that's not fear, that's awareness. And you don't honor life by suffering through it. You honor life by being present inside it. And living enormous isn't about constantly reaching, it's about being fully alive while you reach it. You don't arrive somewhere better by hating where you are. You arrive there by being rooted enough to grow. Because happiness isn't loud. It doesn't need, validation. It doesn't need an audience. And I've said this multiple times. It's when your mind stops arguing with your life. And my happiness doesn't have to look like anybody else's. and neither does yours. And I don't have to shrink my ambition, and neither do you. And I just refuse to punish myself on the way there. And the moment I stopped withholding happiness until some future version of myself arrived, I realized I'm allowed to feel content this whole time. I guess you can call it a Picasso. That's art, that's balance, that's quiet power. And backing things up with Jesus, there's a story in the Bible about, sisters, Mary and Martha. And if you don't know it, here you go. So Jesus comes to their home, and Martha, she immediately starts working, serving, preparing, doing what needs to be done. And then you have Mary. Mary does something different. She sits at Jesus's feet and is present. And Martha gets frustrated and says, Jesus, don't you care that I'm doing all the work? He says, Martha, you are worried and distracted by many things, but only one thing is necessary. And that hits me every time because Jesus doesn't say working is wrong. And he doesn't say ambition is bad, right? He says, don't miss what's in front of you while you're focused on what's next. Martha was so busy preparing the moment that she literally missed the moment. And that's the reminder for me and maybe for you too. And hopefully you guys get this from this episode is don't miss the blessing God is giving you now by being focused on the next thing. You can build, you can grow, you can chase your goals, but you can also be present. You can also be happy. And you can also receive what God is giving you today. Now, I'll leave you with this. Some people spend their whole lives building a house, planning it, fixing it, upgrading, working overtime to afford it. And they're obsessed with the foundation, the structure, the future value. But they never sit on the couch. They never invite anyone in. They never enjoy the view from the window. They're always preparing to live there. And that's what a lot of us are doing with our lives. So here's the question that I want you to sit with as you're going to work or whatever you're doing as you're watching this. Are you building a life you plan to live someday? Or are you already living in the one God gave you now? All right, my MON family. I'll see you next Monday. Same time, same place, still showing up. Bye now.